What if I told you the man who became America's greatest president lost more elections than he won? What if I told you he was considered a loser most of his life, not a hero? And what if I told you there's an entire untold story behind the legend? Well, welcome to Best Hidden America, where we uncover the truth behind the myths and legends that have shaped our nation. And today we will go back to the beginning with the story of Honest Abe, himself, Abraham Lincoln, and reveal why Lincoln may have been the greatest president in American history, despite the fact that he was a loser most of his life. Chapter 1. Born into poverty. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a log cabin in Hogganville, Kentucky. This isn't just some random cabin off the beaten path. It's the exact spot where the 16th president of the United States was born. We know where he took his first breath. But what does this tell us about the man who would become America's savior? First, he wasn't born into wealth or power. He wasn't born into a grand estate in Virginia or a rich family in New York. He was born poor. His father, Thomas, was a self-educated lawyer who had moved his family to Indiana when Abraham was just a toddler. But despite their humble beginnings, Abraham seemed destined for greatness. That is, until tragedy struck. When Abraham was just 9 years old, his mother, Nancy, died of milk sickness, a disease caused by drinking milk from cows that have consumed poisonous plants. Losing his mother at such a young age had a profound impact on Lincoln. I say on this idol that I really know about good. I learned from my mother. After his mother's death, Lincoln and his father moved to Illinois, where they lived on a farm. Unfortunately, Abraham hated farming. He wanted more out of life, so he borrowed books by candlelight and taught himself how to read and write. This is where he earned his famous nickname, Honest Abe, because he was known for his integrity and honesty. Even as a young man, he was always truthful, even if it wasn't convenient. For example, when he worked as a storekeeper, he would often give customers credit, even if he knew they might not be able to pay it back. But the problem was that Abraham didn't just dream big, he acted on his dreams. He set his sights on becoming a politician and made several attempts to run for office. However, each time he did, reality would come crashing down and crush his hopes and dreams. Chapter 2. A chain of failures. In 1832, Lincoln decided to run for the Illinois legislature. He campaigned hard, but he was defeated by his opponent, John T. Stuart. This wasn't a major setback. So Abraham soldiered on and ran again in 1834. He won and served one term in the legislature. But then, disaster struck. In 1836, Lincoln decided to take the next step in his political career and run for the U.S. House of Representatives. He ran on an anti-slavery platform, which may have cost him the election. Whatever the reason, he lost. To make matters worse, his law partner, John T. Stuart, left the firm to join the winning candidate in Congress, leaving Lincoln with nothing. To add insult to injury, Lincoln's business also collapsed around the same time, leaving him in debt and bankrupt. Lincoln was devastated. He felt like a complete failure. He was deeply depressed and even considered ending his own life. Fortunately, he reached out to friends for help and slowly began to recover. But this wasn't the end of his failures. In 1843, Lincoln ran again for Congress, but lost. In 1846, he ran again, but lost. Then, in 1854, he ran again for the Senate, but lost. Lincoln was now a man in his mid-40s who had failed in business, lost multiple elections, and suffered a nervous breakdown. Many of his friends, including his wife Mary, thought he should give up on his political career and try something else. But Lincoln was determined to succeed. He didn't want to be a failure. He wanted to make a difference, and he believed he could do that in politics. Chapter 3. The Comeback Kid. So Lincoln kept trying. He ran again for the Senate in 1858. This time he faced off against Stephen Douglas, who was a well-known and popular Democrat. Again, all signs pointed towards another crushing defeat. But this time, things were different. Lincoln wasn't the same man he was in previous elections. He had grown and matured, and his message resonated with people. Although he ultimately lost the election, he gained national attention and established himself as a leader in the fight against slavery. One newspaper wrote, "Mr. Lincoln has, during the progress of the campaign, exhibited a strength of mind and a firmness of purpose which have won the admiration of all who have had the pleasure of knowing him." And that's when everything changed. 4 years later, in 1860, Lincoln ran for president. He was the Republican nominee, and he went up against 4 other candidates, 3 Democrats and 1 Constitutional Union candidate. Again, it looked like another lost cause. But something amazing happened. Lincoln won. even though he wasn't on most Southern ballots. He won with 40% of the popular vote and carried 219 electoral votes to his nearest rival, Stephen Douglas. 123. Despite the fact that he had lost more elections than he won and had been considered a loser for most of his life, Abraham Lincoln became the President of the United States. Chapter 4, From Failure to Hero. Of course, Lincoln's presidency was far from easy. He faced the greatest crisis in U.S. history, the Civil War. But he didn't back down. He didn't let the haters get him down. He stayed true to his beliefs and led the country through the war and emerged victorious. He abolished slavery and preserved the Union. He is remembered as one of the greatest leaders in history. So, here's the takeaway. Abraham Lincoln, who many of us consider to be the greatest president in American history, lost more elections than he won and was considered a loser for most of his life. Yet somehow, he managed to succeed. How? Because he didn't give up. No matter how many times he failed, he picked himself up, dusted himself off, and tried again. And eventually his hard work and dedication paid off. Now, obviously, there's more to Lincoln's story than can be covered in a small video. There are entire books written about his life and presidency. But hopefully this video has given you a new perspective on one of America's greatest heroes. He didn't become great overnight. He didn't become great without facing setbacks and obstacles. He became great because he kept trying, even when things were tough. Chapter 5, The Greatest President. Lincoln was inaugurated on March 4th, 1861. As the first Republican president, he was already facing a major crisis. The secession crisis. The Southern states were threatening to leave the Union over the issue of slavery, but Lincoln stood firm and refused to back down. He was inaugurated on March 4th, 1861. On March 11th, 1861, Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina. This was the start of the Civil War. Lincoln immediately called for volunteers to put down the rebellion. The war was long and bloody, but Lincoln never wavered. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which freed slaves in the Confederate States. He pushed for the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery throughout the United States. He delivered the Gettysburg Address in 1863, one of the most famous speeches in American history. By 1865, the Union was preserved, slavery was abolished, and Lincoln was re-elected for a second term. Sadly, he would not live to see the end of his second term. On April 14, 1865, he was shot by an assassin while watching a play at Ford's Theater. He died the next morning, but his legacy lives on. Lincoln is remembered as one of the greatest presidents in American history. Chapter 6, The Message. So what's the takeaway from all this? The lesson we can learn from Abraham Lincoln is that success doesn't come easy. It's hard, it's messy, it's filled with setbacks and obstacles. But if you keep trying, if you don't give up, then you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Now, of course, Lincoln was in a unique position. He had the opportunity to run for president. He had access to the best advisors, and he had the support of the Republican Party. But even with all these advantages, he still faced tremendous challenges. But instead of giving up, he persevered. And in the end, he achieved greatness. So whatever challenges you're facing right now, whatever obstacles seem insurmountable, don't give up. Keep trying. Remember the words of the great Mahatma Gandhi. Our ability to endure is what gives us the strength to begin again and again. That's what Abraham Lincoln did. He endured the pain of losing his mother at a young age. He endured the loneliness of being away from home for long periods of time. He endured the ridicule of his opponents and the doubt of his friends. And in the end, he endured the ultimate test, leading the country through a civil war. And he came out on top. So, can you face whatever challenges you're facing right now? Can you persevere and achieve your goals? I believe you can. Just remember the words of the great Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Best Hidden America for more untold stories that inspire.